Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we have the brand new Tier 10 abomination that is Hawaii import to review for you guys today. This is a very, very interesting little boat here. Dare I say, probably one of the most unique premium ships we've ever gotten in the game. Well, resource ships. The Hawaii is a maybe thought of, devised plan for the unfinished hull of the USS Hawaii, which is also an Alaska class cruiser. Yeah, as you can see, Wargaming has, well, gone with it. Granted, again, a lot of these designs, Wargaming doesn't completely come up with them. There are some wacky conversions and ideas on what to do with a number of unfinished hulls out there in history. I mean, you can look at some of the designs for the Iowas and such into the Missile Age, right, and see how crazy some got with it. But the Hawaii is for sure up there. So yeah, this thing is technically, I guess, a light cruiser. I mean, yes, it does have obviously the 127mm guns, but I mean, you're on what is essentially a battle cruiser hull. And I know that's just started an argument in the comments down there by itself, right? That statement. But yes, this thing is very interesting, and she is currently available as part of the Steel Fleet event, costing a whopping 39,000 steel, or I believe 33,000 steel and change. With the coupon, which is of course the method that I used to acquire her. So I used my, year's worth-ish of steel on this for you guys, instead of getting what probably would have been a better choice with the Bremen. But yeah, this one is obviously far more interesting, just in terms of like, what the heck even is this thing, right? But anyway, in today's video, we're going to be going over the Hawaii, discussing whether or not you may want to use the steel you've saved up, or the steel that you will be getting from the Snowflake event that's coming up here in a few days on the Hawaii, as Santa's sleigh goes by here in front of us. But anyway, before we even get to that, massive shout out to the channel's Patreon supporters, because while I did use my steel on this, obviously none of these ships reviews would be possible without the Patreon supporters' generous donations. I am not a CC, so I do not get the Hawaii or any of the ships we're going to be looking at here in the next few days to review for you guys for free. All of these ships are acquired either with my own resources or with money that the channel generates. And obviously the money that the generous Patreon supporters do donate to the channel. So if you wish to be oh so generous, you can check out that link in the description down below. So again, massive shout out to those guys whose names should have just appeared up on screen. But anyway, let's take a look at the Hawaii. So again, if you want to acquire the Hawaii right now, head on over to the Armory and check out the Steel Fleet event, which is right here in the featured section, and there she is. So again, 39,000 steel, or again 33,000 and change with the coupon. So what's very interesting is that in her list here, they go through all of her, ups and downs. Apparently, her repair party restores last Citadel damage. That's interesting. But I do like how they list torpedoes and they say, actually, she has none. It's like, okay, Wargaming. Okay. But, yeah, okay. So that's some interesting wording, I guess, Wargaming there. But, all right. Alright, so that's how you acquire her. So let's take a look at her armor and her camouflage. I do believe no, I did not get the, no, I did. I do have a made of steel camo here. Okay, never mind. I'm not going to run that. I'm just going to run the standard historical-ish camo on the Hawaii, which is, the normal U.S. Navy camo. I do apologize if there's some random cuts here. I do have the flu, so I might be dying of coughing or sneezing in between these sections. So anyway, yeah, so this is the perma camo you get with the ship. For economic bonus, she is a tier 10 premium special reward, whatever you want to call it, ship. So she does not have any baked in bonuses, but she does come with the bonus package that most tier 10 ships come with, most tier 10 premium reward resource ships come with, which is a 50% buff to her credits and a 100% buff to her various XPs. I will be running the green economic bonuses on this ship during this video, so if you are wondering what the how I got to the end screen outcomes with my economy, that is how. So let's take a look at her armor. So you have a 27mm bow, 27mm stern, and her helicopter deck is 27mm as well. So is her bow deck. Mid deck is 36mm. Upper armor belt is 28. Main armor belt is 229, with the lower armor belt being 179. And then 27mm torpedo bulges. So again, a very well armored light cruiser. And then, of course, there is her citadel, which is below the waterline and protected by the torpedo bulges there. So you got kind of some space armor effect going on there, in addition to the lower armor belt. All right. So for survivability, she has 71,100 HP, which is, again, a lot for a light cruiser, with a 13% torpedo damage reduction. Her main battery guns consist of 24 127mm guns. So every 127mm turret you see on this ship is indeed a main battery gun. She does not have any secondary guns. So that's wild, right? So yeah, that's pretty interesting. I especially love how the forward guns, let's see if we can get back to them here. Yeah, travel back up the ship. The forward guns are, of course, not aligned. That is hilarious. The ship was, this is a command ship conversion for the Hawaii hull, which is why, you've got the increased superstructure, all the different, antenna, radars, and such on the ship. It wasn't really meant to see combat, right? These are ships that, the admirals and stuff hang out with in the back. While they, command battle or whatever. It's why they have all this communication equipment, and this is really just supposed to be, anti-aircraft to protect the high-ranking officials on board, high-ranking brass on board. But of course, in game, we're going to go into the middle of combat with this. So anyway, they have a 6-second base reload time, and 180 time of 4.5 seconds, a maximum dispersion of 159 meters, a maximum range of 18.3 kilometers, which is incredibly far for tiny guns like this. You do only have HE and AP shells. The HE shells do a maximum damage of 1800 with a 9% fire chance, 200mm of armor penetration. The AP shells do a maximum damage of 2400, and both the shells come out of the tubes at 808 meters a second. Now, you do get an alternative mode, which you get a 43% debuff to the main battery reload time, but apparently the arcs are better because firing over elevated terrain is easier, but you lose 4% of your HE shell fire chance, and you get a 31.7% debuff to your main battery firing range, and your AP shell damage is tanked by 12.5%, and taking a target lead is more difficult. I wonder if, like, the standard arcs and ballistics are like the Austin's ballistics, because the Austin has better ballistics than the other American cruisers, and then when you swap over, it gives you the old American ballistics, because they have the rainbow arcs and the the worst air drag. That's what it sounds like. We'll see what happens with that in battle. She does get 2 charges of the ASW airstrike with a range of 8 kilometers. A defense is 93, the rating, because of course you have 24 127mm guns, but you also have 12 76mm guns. What's the range? 6 kilometers. 33 knot top speed with a 13.8 second rudder shift time and a turning circled radius of 840 meters. And her concealment is 15 kilometers base. Alright. For her consumables, you do have your choice of DFAA or Hydro. You take a Hydro because that's the correct one to take. Of course, there's those modified shells we already took a look at. You do get surveillance radar, which lasts for 40 seconds and has a range of 8.5 kilometers. So relatively short range radar for tier 10. Granted, it is a quote-unquote light cruiser, so it's meant to be played somewhat closer. You do get a repair party that regenerates 355 HP per second, and as Wargaming stated, it does not regenerate citadel damage as efficiently as other repair parties. So that is the Hawaii. So I'm going to go ahead and put a commander and module build here on the ship, and meet you guys right back here. Alright, boys and girls, let's go over this build. So again, this is without me having played the ship. I have not watched anybody else's video on it. I'm just going off of, the stats that we've looked at here, and I'm just doing my best. Again, this may change as we, play the ship, obviously. Alright, so main armaments mod 1, because this reduces the chance of our main battery guns becoming incapacitated, and it increases their survivability and reduces their repair time. When you are a light cruiser like this with these teeny tiny guns, it's very often that these guns get knocked out. We want to prevent that, and when they do get knocked out, we want them to come back as fast as possible. So this reduces the speed at which they come back, increases the speed at which they come back by 20%, and increases their survivability by 50%, and reduces the chance of them being knocked out by 20% as well. I went ahead and I slapped the Surveillance Radar Mod 1 on it, the Coal mod, for another 20% runtime on the radar. I mean, especially if we're dealing with like destroyers and stuff, obviously we want to keep them lit for as long as possible, so it made sense to me. And then I went ahead and took Aiming Systems Mod 1 to give us a 7% buff to our dispersion of the main battery shells. Now, again, I don't know exactly how accurate they are. They look pretty accurate, obviously, looking at the numbers. But obviously, what's on paper and what's in game is often two different things. Plus, it's the only mod that really made sense here. Main battery mod 2, the turret's already rotated in 6 seconds. Who cares about that? AA Guns Mod 1, yeah, who cares, right? And then I went ahead and took Damage Con Mod 2 because I'm pretty sure this thing has, battleship burn time because it is such a large ship. So we want to get those fires out as fast as possible because that's, doing damage to our ship. We then went ahead and took Concealment Systems Mod 1 for a 10% buff to our ship's concealment. Obviously, having a 15-kilometer concealment on what is essentially a light cruiser is not ideal, even though, again, it does have, heavy cruiser, almost battleship HP. But again, smaller concealment is better in most cases because you can disengage and such as you see fit because you are stealthy, right? So we want to have that. And then we went ahead and took Main Battery Mod 3 because this is all we could take in this mod slot besides the AA Gun mod. Not Secondary Gun mod because this ship doesn't have any secondary guns. So yeah, so this gives us another 12% buff to the reload time of the main battery guns. I went ahead and I just slapped my Austin Commander on here, and this is what we're going to rock for right now. So, of course, we have Preventive Maintenance, Last Stand, which is the skill where when your engine or your rudder gets knocked out, it still works, but at a reduced efficiency. And for cruisers, mobility is everything, so we don't want to become immobile, right? Then went ahead and took Safety Circle. I probably would have swapped this over to consumable enhancements because again, this is my Austin Commander, right? And Austin's a very frail ship, right? So you kind of need to know who's looking at you. But of course, I didn't want to pay just to move one skill over. We'll be all right without the buff to the action time of the radar. As much as I would, actually, let's. I have enough free XP. Let's change that, shall we? I have enough Elite Commander XP. Let's do this. So now we're going to all this for one skill, boys. That. There we go. Alright. Now we have the increased runtime for the radar. Alright. Because I just thought, you know what? I spent the coal on it. Might as well get the full radar length out of it, right? So anyway, consumable enhancements. Alright, then we went ahead and took heavy HE and sap shells. This is free damage. Another 10% buff to our HE shell damage. Literally free damage because our guns are tiny. They are 127 millimeters, so we do not get the penalty for having 149 millimeter and above caliber guns. So, yeah, free damage. Adrenaline Rush, of course, because as we take damage, this decreases our reload time by 0.2% for every 1% of HP loss. So, you take damage, you get a better reload. Alright, Superintendent for additional charge of our consumables. Another heal, another hydro, another radar. Yes, please. And then Survivability Expert for another 450 HP per tier. So since we are a tier 10 ship, we get 4,500 HP. Which means we now have, I think, over 80,000 HP with this and the flag. Then finally, Consumables Expert for another 10% to our concealment. So what has that done to the Hawaii? So now we have 79,400 HP, just shy of 80,000 HP on a light cruiser, right? The guns reload in 5.3 seconds now, and have a 5.2 second turret rotation speed. And maneuverability 34.7 knots with the speed flag. And our consumables now 12.2 kilometers. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into battle with this thing. It's going to be interesting for sure. So I'll catch you guys right there. Alright guys, voiceover Mountbatten here, and holy... First off, this ship is a lot better than I assumed it was going to be. I figured there's no way you can get a, essentially an Alaska hull with more superstructure, but, ripping off the 305mm guns and strapping a bunch of 127mm guns on there. There's no way I thought you could actually get that to work in, a manner that's efficient and good at doing, well, anything, because, obviously the light cruisers, part of their survivability is the fact that, their hulls are thinly armored, so in a lot of cases, salvos that would be devastating to them just kind of zip on through them. So, oddly enough, no armor is best armor in a lot of situations, but of course, obviously, if you aim right, or if, the enemy ship catches you at a bad angle, you get deleted off the face of the map. But those lighter hulls come with, usually pretty good concealment and good maneuverability, of which the Hawaii doesn't really have too much of that going on. You do have a 12.2 kilometer concealment, which is pretty good for the hull. But, again, when we're talking about light cruises, it's not that great. But, yeah, it works very, very well, oddly enough. So, there are a couple of caveats to, of course, the ship working quite well. First off, do not try to play this thing in the open. It's not going to really work out well for you, unless it's just like you and the other ship by itself. Mainly, of course, I'm talking about, trying to farm down battleships. Why? Because this thing does have it is an Alaska hull, right? With more superstructure. So there's more superstructure for the battleship AP to, of course, bite into. There's just more ship there for the enemy ship to, hit. Unlike, again, light cruisers where you can kind of dance around. Can't really do that with the Hawaii because of its size and its maneuverability. So if you can help it, don't try to play it in the open water. I know having the 18-kilometer range that's kind of enticing, towards going, oh, well, I can kind of, open up at the beginning, right? And, get some damage early on. You can do that, but it's probably not going to work out well for you, especially if there's more than one enemy ship present. Now, again, if it's just you and the other guy, like the last 5 minutes of the game, yeah, you can do that just fine. Because the enemy team's going to dogpile you if they see you out in the open because, again, of your massive superstructure and the fact you are a large target and you are an HE spammer and the enemy battleships don't like you and want you to cease existing, right? So be mindful about that. So that's one big caveat. You definitely need island cover to make this thing work. If you got some islands you can, pop in and out of, you can use to limit the amount of ships that can retaliate against you. The ship works very, very well. And basically what I did, and the match watching in the background is not my highest damage game with the Hawaii by far, but it's a good round to show you what the Hawaii can do. So what I was doing with the Hawaii, what was working best for me, is that I would go to the island, and I was basically being, my destroyer's best friend when they were trying to cap. I was using my radar, which with the build that I'm using, it runs for 52 seconds. So you have almost a minute radar. Yes, it's only 8.5 kilometers, but quite conveniently, if you are basically on top or very near the cap, it's conveniently roughly the size of the cap circle. So, yeah. So I would go there, use some island cover to hide behind, or, again, just get in a good position where I could get my guns facing toward the cap or, toward the enemy team while limiting the amount of return fire. Now, since it is an Alaska hull, it can take some punishment. Again, as long as you aren't getting focused. So yeah, having a couple of ships that can retaliate against you isn't the world's biggest deal. It's not like it's a light cruiser where you don't want anyone to be able to return fire against you. You can tank a bit. Again, just try not to get focused. So that's what I would do. And I would just, try to melt the enemy destroyers when they would pop up, which the gun ballistics are very good for. If you're in the standard firing mode, you have very, very nice ballistics. Like, these guns can be used at 18 kilometers very well against larger targets like battleships. It's not a problem at all. Larger cruisers, it's not really too much of a problem. Like, if I'm landing shots with these guns at 18 kilometers, you can, right? But for destroyers, especially from within, like 13, 12-ish kilometers, it's no issue at all. Now, you might be thinking, well, 12 kilometers, don't you want to swap on over to the alternative firing mode and get the faster reload? Yes and no. Because if you're, facing down one of the faster destroyers or a destroyer that has engine boost going, you might actually want to just stay in the standard firing mode to take advantage of the good ballistics, to where, you'll get more shells on target and you maintain that fire chance. And, getting a fire on a destroyer is a pretty big deal because it increases his detection range. So you may want to stay in that, unless they're very close. Like, if they're within like 6-7 kilometers or like within your radar range, yeah, you can swap on over to the alternative firing mode and melt them down, no problem. You basically swap, and it's pretty much what, I speculated about in port. You basically have like the good ballistics that you can find on ships like the Alston versus the traditional, more Atlanta style ballistics if you swap on over to the F key. So if it was one of those quicker destroyers that are like 11-12 kilometers, I would just stay in the standard firing mode, and that murdered them just fine. I mean, you're still throwing 12 shells at them every, 5 seconds-ish, depending upon your adrenaline rush, so that worked just fine. If they were, a lot closer, like 7 kilometers, 8 kilometers, basically within radar range, I would swap on over to the alternative firing mode and use the, more Atlanta-style arcs and ballistics to melt them down. Either way works just fine, so it's a beauty to behold. Great for murdering destroyers, and, something that you should absolutely be doing if you're trying to win the match. So that's how I played it. I went to the cap, tried to support my destroyers, murdered the other team's destroyers. Once the destroyers were either, out of sight or, backing off, I would then focus my attention to the enemy team and start farming them down. And with that 18 kilometer range, with the good ballistics that you have on the standard shells, it's very easy to do. And you'll be setting so many fires in this thing from my experience, especially again if you have the build that I have with the fire flag and demolition expert and all that jazz. You are going to be setting fires no problem in the standard mode. Now, the beauty is, once the enemy ships get within that 12.5 kilometer range, and you can swap it over to the alternative firing mode, oh my god, do you just spew out shells. You're just a hose for HE, right? You are coating the enemy ship stem to stern in just consistent HE shells. It's so annoying to be on the receiving end of, but does it feel so good when you're the one doing it? And even though you do get the debuff to the fire chance and all that, just the sheer volume of shells that you're going to be vomiting out. You have like a 3-second reload. Again, with Adrenaline Rush, you can get down to like 2 seconds and change. It's so stupid. But of course, you have to be within 12.5 kilometers of the enemy ship. Now, with the changing ballistics, you do have more of the rainbow arcs that you find on the Atlanta. So it's pretty easy to lob them over islands and just start melting down these ships. But keep in mind too, you're within 12 kilometers of tier 10 ships like, the Montana, the Yamato, so forth and so on. So that is a pretty high risk, high reward maneuver there. It's much more comfortable, of course, to sit in the back and use the standard shells and farm them down from longer range. But of course, you're not getting quite as many shells on target, but it's still pretty good either way in my humble opinion. So this is definitely like one of the stupidest ships Wargaming has released in a bit, and I don't say that lightly. We've got some real humdingers here, but like, this thing's pretty dumb. It's really, really freaking dumb. And if you play it right, it has a lot of game impact. You play it around the caps and such, you are going to impact the game quite well if you are, murdering the destroyers and such. Now, while this does have the Alaska hull, I know I've mentioned this, I just want to reiterate it here. While it does have the Alaska hull, and the Alaska is a fairly tough cruiser, it does of course have a much bigger superstructure. So it's way easier for, other cruisers to farm down your superstructure. It's way easier for battleships just to rip huge amounts of HP off of your ship by just pinning your superstructure and such. It can be tough, and yes, like I said, you can tank a bit in it, but you are going to get farmed out if you're not playing it smart. So you can't really play it in the open water, which is of course one of its major downsides. That if you do get a map or a spawn where you're near one of the caps that doesn't have island cover that you can really use, it's going to be a rough game for you. You're definitely going to have to play it more in the back, using the standard firing mode, which again can work just fine, but of course if enough of the team takes an interest in you, you're not going to really have the best of time. And sure, you do almost have 80,000 HP, which is wild for a cruiser to have that much HP, but if you get the ship and play it and try to play it in the open water, you'll see why they did have to give it that much HP, because you are just going to get bullied via your superstructure. So just be mindful about that. While yes, the ship is crazy, it can do a lot of wild things, it doesn't do well under concentrated fire. It's not that maneuverable. And the armor, which can be, a silver lining in the right situation, of course, can very much be your downfall in other situations. Because unlike other light cruisers and such who can just deal with overpins and such, you're probably going to be catching a lot more pins because of your thicker armor and such. And of course, your superstructure is a bit of a shell catcher. So overall, this thing's pretty kooky. If you know how to use it, it's quite terrifying. It's very strong in the right hands, and because of that, I would give the Hawaii an 8 out of 10. Is it worth this much still? With the coupon, 33,000 still, that's not too bad. If you've been saving up still, though, there are a lot of good choices right now. Bremen, I've heard, is very good, and I would have gotten Bremen if this thing didn't come out, because it's just so ridiculous, right? But, of course, we had to check it out. So, Bremen's probably the next still ship I'm going to be going for. I don't know if I have enough between the Roussillon Dockyard, which keep your eye out for that review coming out very soon, and the Festive Rewards. I might have enough to get Bremen before the end of the year. I'm just not too sure about that, but we'll see about that. But yeah, 8 out of 10 here for the Hawaii. The pros, of course, being the guns are amazing in either mode. You have great guns for whatever situation you find yourself in. If you have to play it more from the back, you've got the standard firing mode if you're up close and feel like murdering destroyers, getting in knife fights with other cruisers and such. You have the alternative firing mode. The armor is quite good. Obviously, you can tank in it. It's a light cruiser that can actually tank a bit. I might put that in the neither category, because while it's great for doing that, you do have a large superstructure that can be farmed down quite easily, so that might go in the neither group for pros and cons. Radar, great. 8.5 kilometer radar. Could be a little bit longer range, but I mean it incentivizes you to play close to the cap and support your destroyers, which is good. You can get up to 52 seconds with a build. That's obviously very good. What else is great about the ship? Oh, AA is actually pretty good. I didn't even talk about that too much in the actual review. AA is actually pretty decent, obviously, with all the guns and such. So you have a decent little AA ship here, and I'm sure if you do want to build into it, it can be quite a lot better. 2.2 kilometer Consumables is also pretty nice. Again, more than other cruisers, but you do have 80,000 HP, right? So that's pretty understandable there as well. Cons, of course, being the fact that your superstructure is quite large and easy to farm down, a problem that I don't think any other light cruiser really has to deal with naturally. You do get the longer duration fires as well, so be mindful about that. And of course, your heal does replenish less of your Citadel health than other heals, although I didn't find that to be too much of an issue, as most of the damage you are going to take in this ship is going to be, normal damage from your superstructure and your armor. So yeah, but that is a downside. But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think about the Hawaii in the comments down below. If you have it, do you enjoy it, or do you regret your purchase? Let us know all that and more in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Thursday, wonderful Thanksgiving for my fellow Americans out there. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.